Welcome into Behind the Line. I am Parker Terrell here with
Alex Dusky.
and we are on the beautiful campus of Oklahoma State University here in Stillwater, Oklahoma, talking about all things sports and focusing on OSU. Alex, how was your weekend?
It was good. I was really bummed to hear, though, that OSU has postponed their game with Baylor for this upcoming week. So we didn't have football last weekend, and now we won't have it again this weekend.
Yeah, so last week OSU had a bye, of course. We were anticipating playing Baylor this Saturday, but due to the large number of COVID cases, which Alex will talk about in a second, Baylor has postponed. Baylor OSU has been postponed to December 12th, much further into the season.
So the postponement is interesting because they've moved it to December 12th, which is when the Big 12 championship is supposed to be played. So if OSU or Baylor is in the Big 12 championship, then the championship would be the next weekend of the 19th. So this postponement means several things for both sides of the ball. OSU now is going to have 3 full weeks off of practice. Well, not practice, but not playing a game coming into this ISU game.
So the next game OSU will play is Iowa State next week.
Yes, at home. And Iowa State is the only other Big 12 team ranked currently. They're 20th. And we knew that going into that game would be really tough. But so now that OSU will have 2 weekends, 3 full weeks of not playing football, it can definitely help or hurt us. So it'll be interesting to see what the team does with that. Coach Gundy's speaking to the media tomorrow, so I'm excited to hear what he has to say about this postponement. But Baylor has 42 active cases.
Yeah,
28 players and 14 staff.
We kind of buried the lead there.
Yeah,
but Baylor is having serious issues.
And this is their
with COVID
third
right
postponement this season. Second on their hands. The first one wasn't their fault. But
and I don't know. Of course, we are not educated enough to offer an opinion on why that is.
Right.
I'm sure that their football team is following the same guidelines that the Big 12 has instituted throughout the conference, but that doesn't mean that what the players do outside of football, what the other students on campus down there in Waco are doing, we don't have the knowledge to attest to that. But it is striking, to say the least, perturbing that they are having so many issues, whereas other schools around the country are not having as bad of a time. Florida today, though, Florida University did have an outbreak, I think, of 7 new cases, but that's nothing compared to 28 cases that Baylor had.
Yes.
So
the argument's been presented that Baylor should have just taken the loss, and this game should have just been didn't need to be played. How do you think about that?
So a lot of people, this goes back to in the National Football League, the Tennessee Titans having to postpone various games. Right. Should they forfeit? Should they not? In that case, I think that if they broke COVID protocols and that led to an outbreak, then they should have been punished.
Which is what the Titans did.
So that's a different issue. But with Baylor, I mean, unless something comes out that they were breaking protocol, I don't believe in forfeiting. The Big 12 set these parameters into the season just in case something like this happened. All the other conferences have done the same thing as well, back-ending the schedule with more time. And, of course, the college football playoff has not really said, what they're going to do. They have the ability to move that championship game up or down, just like the NFL has a 3-week window for their Super Bowl. So I don't believe that Baylor should have to forfeit unless something comes out saying that they deliberately broke COVID protocols or didn't adhere to any type of the CDC guidelines that all the other teams are faithfully following to our knowledge. I just think that this is a isolated incident with Baylor.
It does, looking big picture, if OSU does continue to be a top team in the Big 12 and we do make it to the championship, that means that we would play a game the week before the championship, whereas our opponent would have a bye week. And so that definitely gives us a disadvantage.
Yes, Oklahoma State is at the disadvantage in this scenario. And I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But I'm not going to say that it's not fair. I think Oklahoma State will be prepared. They're a well-coached team. They'll be able to bounce back. Hopefully something like a horrible injury doesn't happen in that Baylor game leading up to that Big 12 championship.
Because there's just no room for error.
Yeah, that's true. And we've been saying that all season. And with other big-time schools losing, especially this past week, Florida goes down.
Right.
Of course, Texas lost to Oklahoma. Oklahoma State's margin of error just keeps getting smaller and smaller each week.
Exactly.
So this hurts OSU possibly in the long run, but for right now, I think that the Cowboys and Coach Gundy are just looking forward to Iowa State, who is the biggest threat in the conference right now.
Yes.
They're the only team that's ranked, as you said, and I believe this is only going to be the second time that Oklahoma State and Iowa State will face off, both ranked in the top 10 and both being the only ranked teams in the conference. That may be the first time.
Right.
So we're looking forward to that Iowa State game coming up. Alex and I are going to talk about college soccer with our Cowgirl Soccer insider, Adam Engel. Stay tuned.
Hi everybody, my name is Emily Shooping. I'm your marketing coordinator for the Made in Oklahoma Coalition. I'm coming to you with an amazing opportunity. We are teaming up with the Ocali Media Group at Oklahoma State University. We want to tell your story on the following platforms: streaming, newspaper, and digital. This opportunity will not only allow your story to be told locally, but nationally as well. I am so excited for each of you to join in on this tremendous opportunity. This will not only be good for your business, but it will be good for our great state of Oklahoma. You can be expecting an email from me soon with more details about this opportunity. Local has a name, local has a face, local has a flavor. The Made in Oklahoma Coalition.
Welcome back to Behind the Line. Parker Terrell here with Alex Dusky and our OSU Cowgirl insider, Adam Engel. Adam, how are you today?
I am fantastic, Parker. Thanks for having me.
All right, so last week, Adam, we talked with you going into the TCU game. OSU was undefeated at that point, but they have suffered their first loss of the season. It was 1-2 in overtime. Can you just give us the highlights of that game? What happened for the Cowgirls there?
Well, first things first, that game was fantastic. It was a spectacular game and a spectacular atmosphere at Neil Patterson Stadium. It was weird because they started things off with the Hannah Webb goal, and interestingly enough, she's a senior defense player. Usually defense players don't score a lot of goals. She scored this awesome chip shot over the Mexican national team goalkeeper Emily Alvarado, and then it was tight. Both teams were trading shots on each side of the pitch. Then in the 85th minute, 57 second to be exact, Mandy Warren of TCU tied things up, and at that point, soccer's a little bit like hockey. You just put shots on net, the pressure's there, and then sooner or later one's going to find the back of the net. That's what happened. Then we went to overtime. And unfortunately, TCU did. So TCU started possession. It took them 30 seconds, one shot, and they won the game.
So as we talked about last week, this was a matchup between two highly ranked teams in the Big 12, the two highest ranked teams in the Big 12, with OSU going down. How do you think this affects their psyche going into the rest of the season? Do they play TCU again?
No, they do not. Yeah, this season I think they play everyone.
Yeah, until they may face them again in the Big 12 tournament at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But like I said, how do you think this affects their morale, Coach Carmichael and the crew? How do you think that they proceed going further into the season with this loss?
Well, that's a great question. It's interesting because if you think about it, the game before, they went down to Waco. They got 1 point. They were scoreless, a 0-0 draw. So for them, they're hungry. They want to bounce back against a tough Kansas team. And it's crazy because in the Big 12, there's no such thing as an easy game.
Right.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. A lot of people, of course, don't follow women's soccer.
Yeah.
They should. But
I
the Big
agree.
12 is a loaded conference, similar to how it is in men's basketball. Each night,
Yeah.
you have to bring it every night.
Exactly. And exactly that's what Coach Carmichael talked about during last week's media availability. If it's up to the teams to show up. If we don't show up, then that other team is probably going to take over the match. So
what does this loss mean for the rankings? Did we drop nationally in the Big 12?
Yeah.
What happened with that?
Oklahoma State did drop, unfortunately, a week ago they were ranked number 4. There's a look at that fantastic Hannah Webb goal.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just incredible. But so yes, they were ranked 4th a week ago, and unfortunately because of the loss, they did drop, but they're still in the top 10. The 8th ranked team this week, and then they're going on the road Friday night, Rock Chalk Park in Lawrence, Kansas, taking on the 10th ranked Kansas Jayhawks.
Another tough team.
Of course.
A gauntlet of a schedule.
Oh,
so
it
far.
really is.
So, what do you think the keys are to this game against Kansas, as you were talking about, and who are some players to watch?
Well, that's a great question, because last week you had me on the show and I told you the key was to get off to a fast start. They did score in the 25th minute, but then the problem with them is that in the second half their defense is very strong, and unfortunately TCU just kept shooting the ball, just kept putting shots on net, and just really overtook the OSU defense. So the key for OSU is to get off to a fast start and then just stay strong defensively.
So, talking about going forward into the season, do you think that this Oklahoma State team can still get that number 1 seed going into the Big 12 tournament, or do you think that went out the window with this loss?
This team is very good. Now the thing is, they might need some help, from other teams. I know this week TCU was actually ranked 6th, West Virginia 7th, OSU 8th. So you're probably going to need some help from one of those teams if one of them loses. But the pressure is certainly on for OSU to get that number 1 seed. But that's not something that they should be totally worried about at this point.
Who do you think comes out on top in Lawrence this week?
I honestly think it'll be a draw. I think it'll be a 1-1 draw. 2 very strong defenses. It's crazy because get this. So Kansas, a week ago in Waco, unfortunately for them, they lost 2-0. But then prior to that, the first 3 matches, they shut out their first 3 opponents 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. So, the defense was terrific there, but, it is going to be a dogfight.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much to Adam Engel, our OSU Cal Girl Insider. He'll be back next week to talk about that game in Lawrence. When we come back, Alex and I are going to keep talking about some more college football. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Will Joyce, the Mayor of Stillwater. As Mayor, it's my responsibility to help develop plans for a variety of resident needs, including roads, emergency services, and utilities. Some of those services are paid for with federal money that the government distributes to states and communities based on Census Bureau data. This is your tax money coming back to our community, but if you or your household aren't counted, we lose nearly $1,200 per person to places like Texas, Kansas, and Arkansas. So help bring that money back to local communities by filling out the 2020 census. This year, it's easy to do. You'll receive a postcard in March 2020 with a unique code for your address. Using that code, simply go online, call, or request a paper copy of the census and fill it out. I want to make sure that you and your whole household are counted in the 2020 census. It's important not just to Stillwater, but to all of Payne County.
Welcome back to Behind the Line. Alex Dusky and I here at OSU talking about all things sports. We're going to talk about some college football around the country for this segment, starting off with the Red River Showdown between OU and Texas. in a thriller. Perhaps some people, not me, have said that this was the best Red River game ever.
No.
I don't. That's just what I heard.
I don't think
That's
either
just what I heard.
team should have won that game.
In 4 overtimes, the Oklahoma Sooners prevailed 53-45, edging out the, at the time, number 22 ranked Longhorns.
And I would just like to say, I did say that OU would pull it out in the end. I didn't think it would go to 4 overtimes. But, I mean, really, I don't think there was a winner of this game. You know, both teams didn't play their best. And it's just, it's hard to know, like, didn't Rattler get benched at one point in time? But then he did get put back in the game. And, you know, Ellinger, we expected more from him, being a 4-year returner.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that. He did everything that he could in his power to win this game. I mean, willing his team to get to that overtime. They were down 31-17.
That is true.
With only 5 minutes left to play. And Ellinger, with his legs and with his arm, willed that Texas team to make it to overtime. And then some just crazy stuff happened. Missed kicks. The most accurate field goal kicker in the country plays for OU. He just shanked a field goal in overtime, in the third overtime that would have won it, that sent it to the 4th overtime. So it was crazy, Alex. But I tend to agree with you that this showed that both OU and Texas have a lot of flaws,
Right.
especially on the defensive side of the ball. I get the argument that OU played good defense up until those last 5 minutes, and I tend to agree with that. They were playing much better than they had been, but still, to give up 45 points to that Texas team and to give up 14 points in that last 5 minutes is just
right.
rough to see. This gives me hope that OSU can beat both of these teams this season. Now,
Hopefully.
OSU fans out there, let me tell you something. OU is getting back a lot of their best players later in the season. They are suspended right now for testing a failed drug test before the Peach Bowl last season.
Yes.
That's going to help them a lot. Spencer Rattler got benched. He came back, and he was a totally different player.
Exactly.
So just because OU has 2 losses on the season and just because they're not ranked right now does not mean that they are not dangerous, and they would love to play spoiler to an undefeated OSU team coming into Bedlam.
Right, if we still are undefeated at that point. It's just a lot of Big 12 teams are hungry for these wins this year. You know, it's just, I feel like the atmosphere has just changed with so many teams.
Talking more about some other teams, Iowa State played Texas Tech last week, beat them 31-15. I think the score is not indicative of what actually happened. Iowa State dominated this game.
Which was expected.
Purdy was extremely efficient, 32 of 43, 302 and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. This Texas Tech team is not very good this year, Alex. And I thought Iowa State could have scored more points. They just kind of laid off a bit. And then you can talk about it. Both games, Kansas State played TCU and won that game, beating the Horned Frogs with a backup quarterback, mind you. Kansas State, their quarterback that they had, Skylar Thompson, is out for the year.
Yeah, I don't think anything besides the Red River rivalry was unexpected, to say the least. I think that OSU definitely does still need to look out for the Iowa State game coming up next week, because they are hot right now, but they do have a bye week. You know, the only Big 12 games this weekend are Kansas, West Virginia, which won't be anything much to watch anyway.
Yeah,
but
I mean, West Virginia should win that game pretty handily.
Of course.
But who knows anymore in this year. But as you said, it's beginning to look like there are 3 teams in the Big 12 that are the best: OSU, Iowa State, and Kansas State. Although I just mentioned they lost their starting quarterback.
Correct.
So that will cut them down a bit, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which they're not the best at. But right now, that Oklahoma State-Iowa State game that's now next week is shaping up to be the de facto Big 12 championship of who is going to be on top going in through the rest of the season. All right, when we come back, we're going to just cover a lot of sports around the country, talk some NBA, talk some NFL. Be sure to stick with us here on Behind the Line. Welcome back to Behind the Line for our final segment, Alex. As we did last week, and because OSU does not have a game, we are just going to talk about some general sports across the country, just some headlines, and preview some college football that's happening around the country this weekend. Starting off, though, the Los Angeles Lakers won the NBA Finals in 6 games, beating the Miami Heat. Alex, a tough end to your Miami Heat.
I know.
Who you picked before the bubble started to win it all. What did you think about that game and that series?
I think that, like what you and I were talking about before the show, is that Miami, the early injuries from that first game really it killed them. I think that if those players had not gotten injured, it would have been a completely different series. Maybe would have gone to Game 7. And you were saying earlier, the Lakers had it. They were the best team in the bubble, and they're going to be great coming up these next couple seasons,
the Lakers, in what was a loaded Western Conference, finished first. They were also the best team in the bubble by far. Miami put up a good fight, but as you said, losing their starting point guard, Goran Dragic, early, he didn't play the rest of the series, and losing Adebayo for the first 2 games kind of sealed the Miami Heat fate. Don't count them out, though, next season. They're also going to be good. They bring a lot of their guys back.
And they'll have more experience under
They're going
their
to have
belt.
to make some decisions, though. Guys like Duncan Robinson are going to be up for free agency. Andre Iguodala is going to be up for free agency for sure. But talk a little bit more about the Lakers. Having Kobe Bryant pass away this year, you almost thought that it's destiny for the Lakers to get their 17th.
They had to do it
to get their 17th championship, and they went out and they did that in what was tough circumstances, but all credit to the NBA. They didn't have a single COVID case in the bubble in Orlando.
They did it. This is the first sport that has started since COVID and has successfully ended.
Yeah. 0 cases, and if that's true, which I believe that it is, just all props to the NBA and to Adam Silver and all those that made that possible, and congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers winning their 17th NBA title. Moving on, Dallas Cowboys.
Dak Prescott
had a tough Sunday. Their quarterback, Dak Prescott, had a gruesome leg injury.
It was a compound fracture and dislocation of his ankle, so he did have surgery Sunday night.
And it was as bad as it sounds.
It was not good. Don't watch the video if you have
obviously,
an
we're not going to show any of that video here, but it's a tough way for Dak Prescott, who's on the franchise tag, didn't get that long-term deal signed. He did have surgery, and it was successful, and he says that he's going to make a full recovery for next season, but he will be out for 4 to 6 months, and the Dallas Cowboys are now Andy Dalton's team.
That's my guy. I'm a big Bengals girl, so having Andy Dalton, he had 9 for 11 for 111 yards, and he arguably did win them the game with that 38-yard reception by Gallup to move them down the field, and the Cowboys did ultimately win the game 37 to 34. So obviously don't want to overstep, and what happened to Dak was terrible, but I think the game could have ended a lot worse.
Yeah, and prayers up, thoughts and prayers to Dak Prescott, of course. Hopefully he can recover. A lot of guys have. Paul George recovered. Gordon Hayward recovered from those gruesome leg injuries, so I believe Dak can as well. Now let's talk about some college football. The game of the year up to this point. This week, Georgia takes on Alabama, number 2 versus number 3, this week on CBS, a CBS night game, which is
the rarity
extremely
for the
rare.
SEC.
Alex, what are your thoughts on this game? I mean, this will shape really the SEC going forward and the college football playoff landscape.
Right. So both teams are 3-0, so it's a big game in Tuscaloosa. It's really a battle of who. I know it's typical, who can outscore the other, but Georgia has a really sound, fundamentally strong defense. Their defensive, or their head coach, Kirby Smart, was Alabama's defensive coordinator back when Alabama was mad if they gave up 1 touchdown. So he's really strong with that. And but Bama does have a really great offense with redshirt senior quarterback Mac Jones. So I think it'll be a great game, especially for any Big 12 fans who aren't going to watch their teams this weekend. Definitely tune into that game. It'll be a good one.
And to me, these are the 2 of the top 3 teams as they're ranked. Alabama, their defense did not play well last week against Ole Miss, giving up 48 points to the Rebels, and another former assistant of Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin. But the record is very well known. Nick Saban has never lost to a former assistant. And Kirby Smart has not had a lot of success against his former mentor in Nick Saban. So I just don't see Georgia being able to pull this out. I don't trust their quarterback, Stetson Bennett IV. He's a guy that was a walk-on comes in, gets to play in place of Dwan Mathis, who didn't play extremely well in the opener, and he's made a name for himself so far. He's more of a game manager type quarterback. He's not a guy that's going to go out and win the game by himself. He's definitely not Joe Burrow,
Right.
or a quarterback like that. So I think Alabama comes out on top in this game.
And you know that Alabama's defense is upset about giving up those points to Ole Miss.
There were allegations that Ole Miss was stealing signals. We're not going to get into that, but Alabama's defense looked great the first 2 weeks, and then had a crazy 48-point giving up 48 points. So I don't know, but I think Alabama is the more talented team around the board, and Nick Saban just does not lose to his former assistants.
All right, it'll be a good game for sure.
What do you think? Who do you think's
I think it'll be Bama for sure. Roll Tide.
Yeah, and then that sets up, Alabama versus Clemson. We've seen this old story before. Okay, thank you so much for watching. For Alex and I and the entire crew here in Studio 318 and Behind the Line, we thank you and hope you tune in next week where we can talk about some OSU football.
Hi everybody, my name is Emily Shooping. I'm your marketing coordinator for the Made in Oklahoma Coalition. I'm coming to you with an amazing opportunity. We are teaming up with the Ocali Media Group at Oklahoma State University. We want to tell your story on the following platforms: streaming, newspaper, and digital. This opportunity will not only allow your story to be told locally, but nationally as well. I am so excited for each of you to join in on this tremendous opportunity. This will not only be good for your business, but it will be good for our great state of Oklahoma. You can be expecting an email from me soon with more details about this opportunity. Local has a name, local has a face, local has a flavor. The Made in Oklahoma Coalition.